All right, welcome to another episode of Barnes University. We have a special guest tonight, Bradley Myers. This is a guy that I definitely respect his work. We found each other, or he found me on LinkedIn. I did a project that was, pertaining to the Titans 2021 offseason game plan. He had a liking to it. This guy was definitely a do it first type of guy. Called me up, and we made that connection. We made the bond, and now have him on the show. He's going to be one of our better co-hosts. I know he is, because he's going to give us a different angle to the analytics side of the draft process and evaluating prospects. What's up, Bradley? How you doing?
Hey, man, I really appreciate you having me on. I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk about some of the stuff we're going to get into tonight regarding the draft and some of the prospects that are being looked at.
Absolutely. So just tell the people a little bit about yourself and where they can find your work and where they can find, you in general.
For sure. So first and foremost, I'm a sales rep at Quick Cut Video and Analytics. We are a direct competitor to Huddle. I do a little stuff in the meantime on the side. I'm a draft writer for Pro Football Mania, and I also do some customer service and some social media for Dynasty Owner. For those that are unfamiliar with either one of those, Pro Football Mania it's typically just it's a Twitter account, but also a website that just posts a lot of material regarding the draft, regarding college recruits, NFL fits, different stuff like that. And Dynasty Owner is actually a new fantasy platform that takes into account player salaries and contracts. And in my opinion, I mean, obviously I know I work for them, but in my opinion, it's one of the better setups out there as far as that goes. I know there's a couple other ones that are floating around, but I mean, it's the only one that uses true salaries, true extensions, and has a true salary cap. So it's been a lot of fun getting to kind of help those guys in the startup sense. I think you're muted, Charlie.
Yeah,
there you go.
There I go. I missed the mute button. We're human here, but that's something I definitely need to check out more myself, because I think that's an interesting part and aspect of the game that I don't think enough of us get in. We kind of overlook it. But tonight we're going to be talking about running back models and pertaining to athletic scores and how you kind of work through that. What does it mean? I know a lot of it has to do with the rankings, ranking them from prospects in the past, and then obviously having comparisons, and is a good indicator and predictor on future success in the NFL. So just give us an idea of your model and some of your favorite guys in this year's draft.
Yeah, for sure. So, first and foremost, I kind of laid the groundwork for this model when I was an intern with Tracking Football. For those of you who aren't familiar with them, they are I think they're still in the startup phase, but I mean, man, they're adding clients, godly left and right. But basically what they did is they database, and I think at this point it's got over 100,000 athletes in there going back to like 2010. I know they've got Julio Jones. They've got, they obviously went back a pretty good ways for historical context. But basically what Tracking Football taught me was the importance of multi-sport participation and how it correlates to success in the NFL. So of course, I spent about 6 months with them, and then that just kind of led me to poking around in some spreadsheets and tearing things down and starting back over. And I came across my, this is my first running back model that I've really taken the time to sit down and poke through. I've only got a couple of draft classes going back to last year's and then this year's, but small sample size, but it's early on. It's been shown to be a pretty big hit. It actually had James Robinson inside the top six, which was a huge. Obviously he had one hell of a rookie season. And then this year it's got. I went ahead. We don't have any workout numbers for Najee Harris. I still think he's going to end up being the top guy if he was able to test. But right now, currently, Javonte Williams is the number one guy. I still went ahead and put Najee above him. But by the numbers, the top three are going to be Najee, Javonte Williams, and Travis Etienne for me. The model itself takes into account a few categories. Ones that historically you can go and look up some different work by Football Outsiders and player profiler. But history has shown that, these features have really shown the most success for the running back position. But my model takes into account Dominator rating, which if you're not aware of that, definitely go give that a look. You can check that out on profiler.com. Takes into account college yards per carry, target share while in college, their BMI, takes into account their speed score, their burst, which is their broad jump and their vertical jump combined, agility, which is going to be their shuttle times combined. And then it also weighs in if they've had any multi-sport participation in high school, if they had any track participation in high school, what their conference was on a graded scale, and lastly their relative athletic score. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's called RAS for short. Kent Lee Platt does that over at Pro Football Network. Pretty interesting stuff if you haven't checked it out. But anyway, it weighs all of that, and like I said, going back into last year, it had a pretty good hit rate on James Robinson, as well as Antonio Gibson. It actually had Antonio Gibson as the number 2 ranked running back last year, behind Jonathan Taylor. So something I'm going to continue to build on and just make sure that those aren't one-offs. But so far so good. It's proven to be pretty accurate. And like I said, it's something fun and something that I really enjoy doing.
Absolutely. I didn't even know that it went that far into the process. I mean, you mentioned BMI, speed burst, combining all those things. When I look at that, looked at those numbers before these athletic quotient scores kind of came out, I always kind of did it in my head. This is what that means. Okay, you're going around a cone, you're bending, you're showing agility. Okay, what can you do in a 10-yard shuttle that's showing burst? Your 40-yard dash, obviously, that's a certain speed metric. So it's very interesting how guys that are interested in your models, the way that they put everything together. So that's pretty fascinating. So you already mentioned James Robinson was one of the guys last year that was kind of a sleeper, but you guys already kind of knew what he may be. Who is a guy in this draft class who may be someone that's not talked about a lot and might be considered the sleeper of the group, if you have them?
For sure. So, and I'm so glad you started off that question, because I have been I'm beating the drum for this guy all off season. Right now, as my model stands, Elijah Mitchell from Lafayette, Louisiana Lafayette, he is actually he is the number 4 running back in this class, behind Najee Harris, Javonte Williams, and Travis Etienne. Just to start off, I mean, the guy had an incredible, absolutely incredible pro day. His RAS score was actually the 83rd highest out of over, I want to say Kent Lee Platt had over 1,400 running back prospects and this was since 1987. He came in, so right now, just for context, Jonathan Taylor's scored about a 6. Let me pull him up here. He scored about a 6.24. The next highest was Antonio Gibson last year with a 5.66. Right now, I've got Javonte Williams at a 5.49. Like I said earlier, I don't have all of the numbers on Najee Harris, but his pre-combine score was a 4.53. So I went ahead and estimated that he would probably be a little bit higher than Javonte. But Travis Etienne is a 5.4, and then you have Elijah Mitchell coming in at a 5.07. Just for context, in last year's class, James Robinson came in at a 5.19. You had DeAndre Swift coming in at a 5.24. And then Cam Akers was a 5.5, and AJ Dillon was a 5.62. So for him to be, not only is he not talked about, he's obviously a smaller school guy, but he also, he really played mostly in a shared backfield in college at Lafayette. And I really think, had that not been the case, his numbers would have been, his dominator numbers, that is, would have been a lot higher than they were. But I mean, as far as his speed score, his burst, his agility, and then of course going back to his RAS score that I've already mentioned. I mean, the dude's a freak athlete. I compared him to just as far as from an athletic perspective, and then honestly, just the workload that I believe he can handle. He does need to improve on his pass pro a little bit, but I think a lot of that honestly came from just kind of an effort standpoint. I don't think it's anything that he's actually lacking in skill. It's more so, he just kind of took some plays off, which, I mean, let's be honest, all those guys are, they can be guilty of that at that level. One last little nugget on him. He actually, so I know everybody at PFF was beating the drum for Javonte Williams and how high he scored. Elijah Mitchell actually had the highest graded game of any running back in the 2020 season. And that was I believe it was called, it was the First Responder Bowl against UTSA. That was the highest graded game by a running back all season. He might not have had the highest, composite grade, but as far as an individual game performance, that was the highest one that they tracked. So definitely somebody that's being slept on, in my opinion, flying under the radar. I honestly would not be surprised if he ended up being a day 2 guy. I don't think he's first round material, but he's definitely got potential to go day 2.
I agree. I feel like there are people that will concur with that assessment. When you compare tape study, you compare character, and then you compare, RAS, those type of analytical, that data, he's certainly going to be in day 2, I believe. It might be, the second round, back in the second, but I definitely believe he might squeak into it. Now, for the detractors, how much of this data is used and then comped with actual tape study? Is it predominantly you're the type of guy? Are you the type of guy, or that just does the numbers and I watch a little tape, or is it, do you really dive into the tape, or is it predominantly these numbers and you believe so much in the numbers that the tape is almost not even needed?
So I will admit, and this is something that I do want to improve on as I enter this field and everything. I don't watch as much tape as I should probably. Most of that is just due to the fact that just like yourself, behind the scenes, we're both working regular day jobs and everything like that. If I had the resources and the ability and the time to sit back and dive into film, I totally would. Now, with that being said, I will go in and grade these guys, and then I will go through and just, I'll do a light digging of what I can find on YouTube and maybe floating around Twitter and watch some of these guys. But I don't spend, as many hours as probably is needed watching film. But with that being said, I think the numbers athletically, analytics speaking, you can just kind of put the two and two together. I think in a vacuum, the analytics for Elijah Mitchell and really all of these prospects, it's almost like, obviously they go hand in hand, but I feel like in a vacuum, athleticism is going to be number one thing that the NFL is looking at. Obviously not to discount tape or film or anything like that. That's obviously super important as well. But I think if you can get that composite number to at least say, okay, we know that this guy can be an NFL caliber athlete, then you can go and dig into the tape and find what those attributes that they do well and what those attributes are that they don't do well. So that's kind of the process that I took with each of these guys. Obviously, the 2021 was total hindsight. I mean, I went and did that this year, but it obviously I was surprised to see, the rankings come out how they were. But, that kind of speaks volumes to the data that I'm putting into this and the context behind it as well. So.
Right. And contrary to popular belief, and we were talking about this off camera, is we glamorize this process so much and we want, the new video or the new breakdown. But at the end of the day, football is a simple game. And,
yep.
These composite scores, these athletic scores, they kind of save people time, to be honest. You look at a guy's profile and says, okay, this is an NFL caliber. And if we have the data that matches up to that, well, look at my background. If we have the data, if we have a data, which is good comedic relief there, but if we have the data that compares to that, then that just makes everything so much more easier. Probably will save me a lot of time, to be completely honest. I go through a lot of guys. So this is very much needed. It's different than like analytics that go through like play-by-plays, because that requires context. That requires so much more nuance to decipher. But this is just strictly, is a guy athletic enough? So I really feel like that's okay. You get a pass as a high level tape study guy. You get a pass from me because you help me save time. So it's all good over here. Now, to kind of close, I know you mentioned that you prefer a wide receiver model, that you haven't really moved full-fledged to that yet. What is a wide receiver model that you subscribe to, and who provides that, and how does it kind of break down?
Yeah. So, I mentioned at the start of this, you can take, and there's stuff, again, there's articles out there. I'm not claiming this to be my own work. This is just kind of stuff that I pieced together that I figured to be valuable in this process, and then just kind of made a composite, score off of that. With wide receiver, going back to running back, you've got speed score correlates to a lot of success. You can go and look at Saquon Barkley. You can look at Jonathan Taylor. You can look at Nick Chubb. You can look at Leonard Fournette. And I know there's people out there that aren't the biggest fan of Fournette. I still think the guy, he might have questionable vision, but as far as an athlete and what he's able to do in the open field, as you saw in the Super Bowl run with the Bucs, there's not a whole lot of guys in the league that can do that. But speed score is one of the main things that correlates at the running back position to success. Now, going into wide receiver, one of the main things that you can tie historically to that is one is BMI. BMI plays a lot because those guys are running routes. They're getting, there's oftentimes where they're going to get blindsided. They're going to make tough sideline catches. BMI matters a lot. The other thing is going to be dominator rating, and arguably the most important thing is breakout age. Every wide receiver, you obviously are going to have your outliers, but going back to your Amari Coopers, who I'm probably higher on than most. Most fans don't really view him as a top guy, but route running, athleticism, everything, it's hard to argue. But you go and you look at Michael Thomas had a high breakout age, high dominator. Brian Edwards for the Raiders, he had a high one. but historically you can go and look at that. So those are always your breakout ages are going to be at the wide receiver position, especially. It's basically showing this kid was able to get on the field as a fresh, I mean, we're talking like a puppy essentially, and run routes and dominate at a young age against most of the time, with some of these guys that come from the SEC, they're coming out of the SEC against NFL caliber defensive backs. So I haven't really, dived into a model for wide receivers yet. But those are going to be some of the things that I weigh for sure. It's going to be the breakout age, obviously BMI, and then dominator, and then being an athlete in other areas as well. But those are probably the main ones that I'm going to be looking at.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a ton of sense.
And that's all you can find. You can find a lot of that stuff contextualized over at playerprofiler.com. That's going to be where a lot of that stuff can be found.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next to close before you remind the people where to find you again, was out of all these websites, what is the most up-to-date and consistent with this information? Like if I wanted to find this now, would I go to Player Profiler? It has this class in it as well, already updated?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Player Profiler, and then you can go to RAS, and I can't remember the website off the top of my head. I think it might be rasscore.com or rasscore.com. But if you go to Kent Lee Platt, I believe his handle on Twitter is MathBomb. If you go to his profile, he has the URL for his website in there. But those are going to be the two. Now, as far as what if you want to weigh in multi-sport participation or conference play or Massey ratings, any of that stuff, you can do that as well. But those are the places that I start. For number one thing I want to know if I'm going to draft a guy is he an NFL caliber athlete? And those two websites do a great job of putting that into context relative to other players at that position.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna be on that tonight, just checking it out. Because as you will find out as our relationship grows over time, I always like to I don't want to leave any stone unturned. And I'm always seeking and searching for the perfect draft class. All my guys panned out. I mean, it's what you should do. I'm trying to find quote unquote perfection. And when I miss, I always try to find where the misses were. You mentioned Amari Cooper. I admittedly wasn't as high on him, but he's panned out to me, in my opinion, way past what I thought. Well, not way past what I thought it would be, but significantly. He's become something, and maybe something within this model was the difference that I didn't, pay attention to. So I'm always trying to find, where I can get better at. So thanks, Bradley, for hopping on. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you hopping on and spreading this knowledge, because not everybody uses it. Not everybody knows about it. Once again, tell people where they can find you, and then let us know what you got coming in the future, where you're headed, and then we'll close.
For sure. So you can find me at CBM Analytics. You can't miss me on there, Bradley Myers. And again, some things I'm working on behind the scenes are going to be a wide receiver model, a tight end model, and then I'm going to be hopefully getting out some more draft pieces over for Pro Football Mania, as we get closer to the draft. But you can catch some of my opinions there, some of my opinions over at Dynasty Owner, which again, that's a fantasy platform we referred to. But that's going to be where you can find most of my work and most of the things that I kind of have cooking up here as we get closer to draft season kicking off.
All right. Well, there you have it. Looking forward to those models in the future. And thanks, Bradley. And we will see you guys on the next one.
Absolutely, Charles. I appreciate you having me, man. It's been a pleasure. Let's make this a regular thing. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Till next time, man.
All righty. Talk to you later.